feedback? What's your first impressions on the app?
First impressions on the app were when, well, I liked the app when I got there. I mean,
Yes.
assuming that the app will be, when it is made available, will be directly downloadable as BRIST rather than going through test flight. But I'm assuming that's just because
right.
it is a test. You know, you're test driving it anyway. But no, I think once with the app opening up and immediately being able to see material that's there, you've got a very clear idea straight away about what the app's all about. So and what I did like about it was being able to access stuff straight away, being able to swipe across quite quickly to go through to find stuff that I was looking for. Scaling up I think there's an issue there, because as soon as it starts to become more heavily populated, then that could be a problem, couldn't it? But with the test material that's there, then the idea of doing it. But I think if there's going to be if you can do that with a menu so that you can get to the things you want to look at quite quickly. Then in the same way that we need to do the same thing, I think with mesh and mesh guides, then I think that will be interesting to see how this is developed. But then I suppose the question I'd have is, who is the app going to be for? Is it going to be for students, or is it going to be for teachers, or is it going to be for a combination of both? And thinking about then, that made me think about, so you'd need to be sure of what the pedagogy was before you start using the app and thinking about developing this as an app. I think what's the pedagogy that sits behind it? Is it to do with that the students got ownership of their own learning, or is it to do with the teacher as the expert who's populating this for the students? That will be one point for development. So, you know, what's the pedagogy? What's the thinking behind it? Who do they see as being the people that will populate this? Contribute to it.
I mean, I think originally it was for, teacher researchers, people who are happy with their practice, who are interested in their practice, who want to push their practice forward in a research kind of way. So, for me, that's people on master's courses, I think, who are kind of opening themselves up a bit to, the broader, how do I improve what I do through my own kind of research. I think that's the aim, really. That's
well, interestingly, because my students are practitioners, because I'm on a work-based course, I can actually see the benefit of both. I can see the benefit of me as a practitioner in terms of me accessing what I want, but I can also, I would be wanting to, say, for example, discuss with you, okay, Richard, I want to help my own students be better researchers themselves. So as students in higher education, I could see a real value in them, for example, being able to use this app as a quick way of finding out what exactly you put on there, the example of how to write a literature review. I thought, well, this is great. This is really good. I should have been using this before. And then that led me down to think, okay, so there is a real, if students in higher education could access some of this material, this could be really good. But then, because I always like to extrapolate it down as a practitioner who's come from working in schools and working in secondary schools and primary schools, I can extrapolate so much of this stuff down to quite young kids being able to access information for themselves about things that they're particularly interested in, because part of the work we used to do in schools and as a group of primary schools was to get the kids to be researchers as well as the staff to be researchers, and actually that really helped to contribute to what I felt we had as a learning organisation. That the school as a learning organisation was encouraging the kids to do their research as well as the staff. So I'm future thinking. Yes, apps like this that are accessible for students as well, depending on what their level might be, is I think could be a real value to it, which is why I was thinking about the menu at the front and being able to sort out what could possibly, how people could navigate their way once it becomes live. But looking at it as users being practitioners, whether they're student practitioners or which could be masters, it could be undergraduate student practitioners. And even and me as a learning practitioner, but as a lecturer as well. It's I like the idea of being able to access things really quite quickly and to find that material quite quickly. It's making me think, how could we adapt something like this for mesh guides, so that we can get, how are we going to use app technology for mesh guides and for the whole thing on knowledge sharing. So positive definitely in terms of how it's done. In terms of the material that's been put on, then I think an overview of the material, like a synopsis of the material, was been really helpful with those follow-up links. And in fact, I found it really quite interesting. Some of the synopses were really quite informative in their own right, and gave me some initial information, but then the attached links or complete papers, I thought was a real advantage as well. No, I'm saying this as somebody who doesn't use apps hugely, but I mean, I'm capable of not worried about using apps. The technology doesn't worry me at all. It's just out of laziness and just being rather traditional that I've tended not to. So in some ways, I'm looking at this as being somebody, well, I know if I could navigate this to find the stuff that I want, I would use it on a mobile device like my phone, in the same way that my students do.
I wonder if that comes under because I've got a question here about how you'd improve it or change it. Do we need a kind of start here kind of page?
I think so. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because I suppose I knew what I was going into when I test drove it. So I didn't really need the lead in, but if I'm using an app, usually if I'm using an app for the first time, having an indication of how to is quite useful. But then you don't want that to be so dominant that you spend all your time learning how to use it. I think something which is intuitive, that gets you started, like start here. And I think Apple are brilliant at this in the way that they give their instructions. They're really thoughtful about how to navigate, and they seem to be really almost read your mind in terms of where you might want to go next. What would you need to know next in order to get going? So I think yes, a how-to guide that wasn't too detailed, but was intuitive.